Hey, welcome to React Roundup, the podcast where we keep you updated on all things React related. This show is sponsored by Raygun and produced by Top End Devs and Envoy. Top End Devs is where we create top end devs to get top end pay and recognition while working on interesting problems and making meaningful community contributions. And Envoy, which provides remote design and software development services on a task basis, so clients only pay when tasks are delivered and approved. In today's episode, we will talk about Bit and composable software. My name is Lucas Paganini, your host in the podcast. Joining me in today's episode is also the host, Chris Fruin.
Hello, everybody.
And our special guest, Gilad Shoham, which is the VP of Engineering at Bit.dev.
Hi, nice to meet you, everyone.
It's great to have you on the show. It's not always that we get the VP of Engineering of the company in the show. So, cool.
Thank you.
So, Gilad, could you please give a pitch to the audience about Bit.dev? Like what it is, why should anyone care about it? And then we can get into all the nits and bits about it.
Sure, of course. So, Bit is basically a tool chain to build composable software. It helps you to improve reuse and sharing components, increase composability, and eventually getting more speed of development, more velocity, and more consistency across your product. Um, that's like an eye level. We are working on these problems for the past almost 10 years now, and we are focused not only on technical and technological issues around this topic, but also around philosophy and around methodology of how you can improve your dev lifecycle workflow, and there are many sub problems or issues along the way in order to make better composability, sharing, and reusing.
Cool. So the main premise is about composing software. Nice. What exactly does Bit.dev offers that I can't get with other solutions already existing in the market, such as monorepos like Turbo Repo and NX, or just so at least that's where my mind took me to monorepos, but I'm not even sure if that's a good comparison to make.
First, it's a great comparison. There are different comparison or different categories of product that are kind of compared against Bit. So first, let's make some high-level presentation of how Bit is composed itself. So Bit is composed from two different main parts. One is Bit, the CLI, and the other is Bit Cloud, which is a SaaS platform. It's very similar to Git and GitHub. So you have Bit as a CLI. It's an open source project which manage your components, and the cloud which is like kind of a hosting platform for components and including additional like enterprise features like security stuff and the hosting and CI and searching. So when talking about tools like NX and Turbo Repo, first they are only handling the local development and they are not doing anything related to the sharing later on. So, for example, the entire discovery experience, how I can find components, how I can experience my components, check what fits me, analytics about components usages and stuff like this, which all of these are stuff that all the monorepo tools are not dealing with. Another very important distinction is that monorepo tools are built around repos, which basically means they aim to make more centralization of your workflow. while we in Bit believe in kind of the opposite direction of decentralize everything. So in Bit, many times, many users don't use repo at all, not even like a regular repo, not using Git at all, because we came up with kind of a concept, which is we call it sometimes like a disposable workspace, which you just make a new folder, build your feature there, and then delete this workspace after it. And this is possible because of one of the major features on Bit, which is the import feature, which means you can take any component from any workspace, any project, anywhere in your organization, and you can develop it in uh, in any other workspace or project. So you can kind of clone the source code of different components into your own temporary workspace, develop them there, and then delete the entire workspace. Um, Another important distinction between the monorepo tools and Bit, I think, is that the monorepo tools are um, are basically doing um, either automation for scripts from outside that run on multiple packages, or um, and linking between the packages, while Bit is managing your entire life cycle of your component, which means when you do compilation, for example, on an NX project, the compilation scripts are basically outside NX, and NX is just calling them to run them on different packages, while on Bit, this is part of the component metadata, and we will discuss this in a minute. And the third important distinction is the level of granularity the tools can handle. So the monorepo tools built to handle packages, while we build Bit to manage components, which is many times they are very similar in the technical aspect, but usually it's a different level of granularity. So, for example, if you have, let's say, something like a design system, you have one package for design system, but it is 50 components, and we try to make we build our tool to make each component like an individual entity with its own history, its own package, its own versioning, its own everything. So if you try to make like an NX repo with like 50 components, 50 packages, it's fine. But if you take these 50 packages, which sometimes might be composed from 10,000, from 1,000 components, then these tools are usually starting to get to a bottleneck in many dev experience aspects.
Interesting. So it's very well integrated with disposable cloud machines that you can just use for development and then get rid of it. That's an interesting feature. Um, and who do you think this feature, like, who do you think is more benefited by such features? Because I'm trying to think of a scenario where I needed something like this, and maybe it's just not for me because I can't think of a scenario where I needed a solution that didn't require local development. And like I get the concept about decentralizing that one. I can see how that would fit with my workflow, because I could just have parts of my system that I break into um, other parts. I'm not going to call them other repositories, because we're trying to also, as you said, we can also not work with repositories at all, and still have a way to share this code with others. So, okay, I could package it up into a way and then share it with others. Still, I'm not entirely I'm not entirely seeing how this would be more productive, to me at least, than, for example, just publishing a package on npm and installing from there. Like if I really wanted to separate something from a main repository and share it with others, my approach would probably this, but yours might be better. I haven't fully understood how that would be more interesting than just packaging it up and putting it on npm, and also not seeing how, in which circumstances the cloud development using temporary machines would be more interesting than just the regular local development.
Okay, so great question. So first, maybe something that was not very clear from my description. This disposable workspace today are on your local machine. Okay, so it's just a temporary folder that you create locally on your computer instead of clone the entire repo. We do plan soon to release like a cloud workspace, which will give you the same experience on the cloud. And so the question, so I will split your question to why should I do it locally on on my machine versus why should I do it on cloud, and what cloud give me in this use case. I'll start with cloud because I think it's like shorter and easier to explain. And editing on component based on the cloud is very good for different types of person. First, people who are not developers but working with developers. For example, if you have a cloud workspace, and cloud workspace, um, Bit is managing the entire life cycle. So Bit is knowing how to compile your component and also show you a render version of your component, like similar to Storybook, and showing you the test results and everything. So if you are a designer now and you can change the CSS and see the components rendering, and then make a kind of a pull request, like we call it change request, right from the cloud, without need to set up anything. This is now a game changer because now as a designer, we cut most of the way from designer to production. Or if you are a product manager and you want to change like a message, an error message or something like this, you can do it now from the cloud without need to do any local setup as non-developer. This is true also for developers who want to do small changes in components. So this is about cloud, and this is not available yet. This is in progress. But on the local machine, what important is basically you are right. You can take something and package it up and send it to npm. And Bit is doing something very similar to this, but in much better developer experience. Because the first, I will try to make some kind of high-level layout of the main problems or the main stuff that prevent people from sharing and reusing more code. And I would split it. So the first problem is creation overhead. Okay, if you want more code shared, you need to make more code individual consumable like npm packages. But making a new npm packages from a repository with a big project is a big task. Let's say you want to take your project and start splitting it up to many individual components, and then you take each one of them and make a new repository, and then you need to set up all the tool chain. You need to set up compiler and CI and tester and linter and make README and contribution docs. So in order to do this in scale, it's just doesn't work. So organization solve these problems today two in two ways. One way is that they are doing it only for the stuff that are uh, commonly shared. For example, design systems. The design system, many organizations are building design system, and this is shared in npm, and everyone uses it because they know people will use it. The other kind of solution people have is to pack many things together. So the design system, they pack together 50 or 100 components, and then they have like a kind of a util function library, something like Lodash or Ramda for the organization, and this is another 100 components inside of it. Because making 100 repositories for the design system and doing everything 100 times is just not possible. Um, and this leads to kind of conflicts of interest of using this shared code. Um, for example, if now your design system is composed from 100 components, then I'm as a user less want to use it because few different problems. The first problem is that if I only want portion or some components from your design system, and design system is just an example, okay? That it could be like other kind of library packages. And by the way, this doesn't true only for frontend. When I say component in this context or in the context of Bit, it can be anything. It can be a util function, it can be a microservice, it can be even an application, not only front-end components. Many of the example might be front-end related because it's just easier to understand and the audience here are React people usually, but it's true for also for backend and all this world. So back to the problems of this solution is one that if I only want two components from your design system, now I'm bringing the entire design system and my bundle size and my performance are going to be much worse. Yes, we do have tree shaking, but it's not perfect. It's far from perfect. So if I only need small part of it, I'm not going to use the package you published. I'm just going to build my own or copy from your design system. Another problem is the updating problem. Let's say you update the button component. Now, as a user, if now I need to update the button, I need to update the entire design system, which means I'm now updating 100 components, and I have no idea what is going to happen to my product when I update 100 components at once. So because I know this ahead of time, that every time I'm using the design system, I will need to update it at once, I less likely want to use it, and then less likely to update it when you do changes, unless someone forces me. Let's say the head of design forced me to update the design system version, of head of security forced me because there was like a security issue that was update. So someone pushing me from outside to update right now. Um, on the other hand, if these are individual components, then I'm taking only what I need, then these problems does not exist from the first place. So the first very big issue is to make it very easy to make many components individually available. And every component, by the way, every component you export to Bit is available as regular npm package, and you can install it like any other package using your favorite package manager, pnpm, npm, yarn, whatever. So first thing is like to automate this entire process. Another big problem on like the creation overhead is, for example, maintaining dependencies in package JSON. Okay, so once you start splitting all of it, you need to manage 100 package JSON and dependencies. This should be a dev dependency here. It's a runtime dependency here. I need to install it. I need to manage all the versions. While one of the, for example, one of the problems that we are dealing with is how to make it easy in your own project, even an existing project, to take small pieces, small components out of it as an npm package without need to set anything. And we automate the entire dependency management. So we know to static code analysis your source code and add dependencies automatically, manage the version automatically, even manage if it's a dev dependency or runtime dependency based on if you use it from a spec file or from your regular file of the component, for example. So this is one thing. Another big problem is that organizations tend to share code that they know for sure that will be reused like design system. However, because of this big overhead of sharing and creation, they don't try to share other code, which is in real life, once you try it, is very, very reusable as well. So many product teams can benefit from other product team components, but these other product teams just don't share this code because they they don't want to do this effort of sharing the code, of doing all this manual and tedious process of like extract it out, make a repo, make the docs, make everything set up. So you you get eventually much less code shared in your organization um, than what you can get.
Okay, that does make sense. It's so much more powerful than I had understood at first. So it's really
That's why I'm
amazing
here.
product. Nice.
Yeah.
How long have you been working on this, by the way? I imagine that you were there from the start, right? You're probably
I'm
not
I
just a
wasn't
lead, but founder.
I wasn't from the first day. I kind of joined once they finished to do like once the founders finished to do like the first pivots of any startup. So I was one of the first employees, and I joined almost 7 years ago.
7 years.
Yeah, yeah. This is uh, a very big and complex product.
Yeah.
By the way, something that I didn't mention, which is related like to your question, and I forget to add, is about this disposable workspace. So, like I said, at Beat, uh, Beat is not only a technical solution, it's about philosophy and methodology. Like the philosophy is basically you need to split code and share more code. And then in the methodology, one of the stuff is to help the organization uh, do the mind shift of being more collaborative. So, for example, when you build a component in the context of a repo, in the context of project, you tend to make it more bounded to this context and this project, okay? Because you build it for yourself inside this context. But if you think about the component as the let's say the core entity of your R&D product or R&D like team, and not the project or the application as the core. So most of the organizations are building their R&D structure around applications. They build team around application. They do CI/CD for application. They do testing in the application level. And the components today, everyone build components, like everyone that uses any framework, React, Vue, Angular, whatever, they build components, but they build components to serve the current application. While what we are trying to do in a bit is to shifting it so the components are the main thing, and then the application is just a composition of different components. So when you build the components, let's say you have a feature, okay? You need to build a feature. Let's take a real example. You need to make a new header for your website, okay? Everyone did it in the past. And when you do this inside your project, there is more likely that this header is going to be coupled in different ways to the application. While if you think about header as a feature, what how it looks like, if you try to think about like the definition of this feature, okay, and the way we see the definition of a feature is very simple. A feature is a set of components. The components, some of them need to be built from scratch, they don't exist. Some of them need to be used because we already built them and we need to use them. And some of them need to be used and modified because we need, I don't know, new APIs from them. So if you need now, if now this is the definition of the header feature, you make a new folder. This folder, it's an empty folder, okay? And on your local machine, you do bit create header. This creates you a new React component from a template. Um, and then you start implement the header, and then you start to install components like npm install. We do it with Bit, but it's basically behind the scene just npm install mostly. Then you do install a logo, and you install a search box, and you install menu, whatever. And then you need to change something because you need to make the search box, I don't know, collapsible, whatever. Then you just import this search box, you add this new feature to the search box, and then once you finish the header, you build it in isolation. Once you build it in isolation, it's much more likely to be reusable easily. And then once you finish, you might import the application itself and you do for integration purposes. So you bring the application at the end, not at the beginning. And this alone make a lot of changes of the reusability. And this is like, it's like a fake change, okay? In terms of your mentality, you can fake it, you can force yourself to do it. But once you have the tools and you can do it for real, it just happens much better.
That makes sense. Huh. Um, I'm just thinking about how this could have saved so much of my time if I knew about this feature earlier. It's crazy that I'm just hearing about it now, and it exists for, well, you've been working on it for 7 years, but for how long has it been like stable and open for public consumption?
So it is available for um, around, let's say, 3 years ago. We did like a major version, and people will really start using it at scale. And we did another big changes like about a year ago, which helps many organizations start using. Um, like some times ago, we make a lot of features around the cloud to make it really works good, not only for individuals but also for big organizations. And we can discuss some of. I can then take some example of give some example of what it means. So, for example, let's take another big problem in sharing and reusability. Um, you start developing your feature, and and you use the design system, okay, for the menu. And now you need this menu to be this menu items like the buttons in the menu. You need them to be rounded and not square, okay, for example. But this feature does not exist on the design system button. Now, in the real world today, once you get to something like this, um, you need to choose your way. One way is to try to push it upstream, like to the design system. Okay, so you need now to fork the design system, set up everything, write contribution docs, read setup docs, and set up everything to make this change. And then you need to do this change, then you need to make a pull request, wait for the review, wait for them to merge it, and then wait for them to publish it, to publish a new version. And this is a very annoying process for you as someone is not part of the design system team. And secondly, this take a long time. What are you doing in the meantime until it's published with a new version? Right? You have a product team pushing you to make something to production, and they don't care that the design system is working slow or that the design system has their own priorities, which are different than your priorities. And the other way you can do is, okay, I need a change. They don't do it. I will just copy paste the menu button, and I will do any change I want, and I will detach from the design system button, which this is, by the way, what most organizations do in many cases. They detach. And this means once that you have now a problem of consistency, right? Because they update the design tomorrow and you don't have this update. And it means that if they have a bug, they fix it, and now you need to fix it as well because you don't connect anymore. And these duplications are growing and growing all the time. So you are not the only one that copied this button. right? There are many other teams that copy this pattern, um, and everyone now need to fix this bug and to align the design. If there is a security hole, then it needs to be fixed 10 times. So it's very costly. On the other end, it gives you kind of the edge of getting to production faster. What we built in order to kind of handle this entire, let's say, cycle. Okay, this happens every day for every company, for every developer. Okay, it's not something that people don't know, but we came up with a different approach to solve this, and we build a concept. We called it a lane. A lane, you can think about lane as a similar um, term for Git branch, okay, but not, but like a multi-repo Git branch, okay, because if you think about it, each component is kind of like a mini repository. It has its own versioning, and you can import it to any workspace, kind of clone it to any workspace and change from any workspace. So lane is when you aggregate many changes across many components. And these components might be your components that belong to your team, and they might be someone else's components, like the design team component, the security team components, um, whatever team. So you start to build your feature, and you build new components, and you change components from other people, and then eventually you make a change request. A change request is very similar to pull request in GitHub, but there are few different, very important distinction. The first is that you change components from different teams. Okay, so now you do a review, one review, okay, like an atomic review for your lane, because your lane is like one entity for many components. And this review should be done by your peers from your team and by people from other teams that you change their code. Okay, you don't have permission to publish or push code to the design system team. So someone from the design system team need to approve it. And so you will do like a holistic review, one for many components, second for different teams, third is that you do review for different roles in the organization, because Bit is similar to Git in a way because it's a version system, but our entity that we version is a component, and a component is a much more complicated entity than a file. So we versioned for each component. Each version contains not only the source code, it contains also the artifacts. For example, the bundle of the component, the package star of the component, the compiled files, and it contains configuration for that component. And this is something else that we should talk about, like how to compile this component, how to test this component, how to link this component. So different configuration of the components. This is part of the component version, and also it contains like the dependencies. So when you do a review, different types of people from different roles doing review. So you have code review from the designer, from the developer, and you can also see the rendering, compared rendering side by side. Think about like a storybook side by side that the designer can add comments on the design, and then you have like an architect that comment on changes on dependencies. So and the product that can do review, and technical writers that can review the documentation of the components, because it's also part of this comparison. So we compare source code, compare rendering, compare docs, compare test coverage, compare test results, compare everything. So different people are doing the review, and the review is also on different types of changes, because when you do change a component, you don't only change code. Sometimes you change a dependency. Sometimes you change the configuration. Now this was used in TypeScript 4. Now it uses TypeScript 5. Before it was using linting with these rules. Now it's linting with different rules. So you do many kind of changes, and then you do a full review on all these aspects. And then once you merge the lane, then these components are shipped across the entire chain and the entire organization. So you can now have an atomic review and atomic merge for your entire feature. Um, and then the next step of it is kind of propagating the changes. Okay, let's say you are a design system team and you make a new version for the button. Okay, now you now what you want is to make this button shipped it into production as soon as possible. But other teams need to adopt your button. It takes time. So what we built is a new type of CI. Okay, all organization and all CI today are built around applications and projects, which means the CI is first doing a Git clone for the entire project and then start doing something on the project level. But we build a component level CI, which means once you change button, we will test button alone. And then we check the card that uses button, and then we check the grid, which has a lot of cards, and then we check the page, which uses this grid. So we kind of building a graph because Bit is, like we said earlier, build is aware for the entire graph of your organization components. So we build a graph and we start propagating change from the smallest component or the most nested component up to the entire organization. And we can now, first we get a very fast CI. Why? Because it's um, parallelized in the component level. So each component gets its own container. Okay. Secondly, we only check and we only run what is affected from these changes. Okay, and the seeders of this graph might be few components. Okay, let's say your lane might change 5 components at once. So we only check what is affected by these seeders and we parallelize it to the maximum. And now also for the first time, you can see visually how your components changes will affect people or components from other teams that you don't even aware that they are using your code in a visual way. So you can see that the button that you change is breaking the about page that maintained, of course, by like kind of product team. And now you can talk about it. You can see it in one place and talk about why a button change break the about page. Okay, and you can communicate about this change. Maybe you did a breaking change in the API. Maybe they use an internal API from the button that they shouldn't use. That's why they break. But now, even before you publish the button, okay, and in today's world, what happens usually is the design system publish the button or the design system, and then 2 months later, some team is updating it, and then they see that it's breaking the other team, and they didn't know about it because it takes time. Now, even before the merge, you know that the button change will affect someone else in a bad way or in a good way. Um, so, so this is another important process of it. Um, all these new features like the CI and the product review and the code review or change request review, lane review are available around the year. So this makes a big change in the market of big organizations that start adopting it.
Understood. Understood. So we spoke a lot. Unfortunately, there's just so much more that we could talk
Yeah,
about. You mentioned before we started the show that you could speak about this for 3 hours, and now I can see that this was very serious. Like I think 3 hours is not that long. Actually, I think we
yeah,
we would need a lot more than that. There's a lot of interesting things to talk about bit. So, but unfortunately, we're gonna have to start wrapping up this episode just so that it doesn't take super long. But before we start wrapping up, Gilad, is there anything that we haven't talked about yet, and you think that we definitely need to talk about this before finishing this episode?
I think that maybe kind of one more important feature or concept that is interesting just to give a glimpse, and this called a component environment. Um, Component environment is basically a component, okay? So we kind of have a special kind of components that basically implement some kind of interface, which are components that manage other components life cycle. Okay, it's a bit complicated. I will try to simplify it in a second, in 2 minutes. So let's think about Create React App, okay? And let's think if you could take Create React App and then put it into a component that you can extend or modify in the organization level, in the group level, in the department level, in the team level, and you versioning it and you can customize it. Okay, so basically you can create this kind of component environment components in your organization for different types of component. Let's say you say this is my environment for React components. It contains stuff like how to compile React components, which types of configuration or bubble configuration, how to test React component, which tool are used, jest, vite, something else, linting configuration, prettier configuration, bundling configuration, whatever. And it also contains templates. So the environment is also registering templates. So I have a template for React UI components, a template for React Hook, a template for React application, for example. And then you have like a node component, and then you have, I don't know, an MDX component type or different types of component. And then when you create a new component, you just attach, we just mention which type of component it is, and then all this configuration and everything is like hidden from you. And as the platform team of the organization, you manage this environment, but this give you like a one unified experience. So in one workspace, you might have React components, Angular components, Node components, MDX component in the same place, and you just tell Bit compile all components. Okay, and you don't need to know how to compile components. If you import a component from the cloud, you can just tell Bit to compile it, to lint it according to the author original standards. And even if you use different tools, so some components in your workspace might use TypeScript, some no, some use Jest, some use Vitest, and you get one unified output of everything that, like by Bit applying each environment on each component and aggregate all the results together. So you don't need to mess with it. You don't need to do anything. And this increase a lot the way of creating new components that are easily shareable and reusable, because you don't need to do anything related to configuration.
Dude, there's just so much. There's just
Yeah.
so much to cover. Yeah. Chris, you good? Like, do you want to ask anything before we start wrapping up?
Yeah, I'd had just two quick questions. So the first one, I noticed like I'm on the homepage here, and you can learn the various ways. And there's Node and Angular and Vue and React. Are you guys interested, or is it in the pipeline? Because I know a lot of people they'll of course do their front end in JavaScript, but the back end they'll do something like Golang or C Sharp or something like that. Is that in the planning to somehow support, or I mean, even like some fancy, who knows, some sort of business logic function in the back end that's written in some other, like a non JavaScript language? Is there anything like that?
So basically, most of the technology we build it in a way that is language agnostic. Most of the concepts are not bounded to the JavaScript or web world. However, there are some features like dependency management and installation and static code analysis and parsing, which is of course language specific. We do plan to support more languages in the future, but we not there yet. We don't have any, even not even a rough timeline on when we are going to start working on it.
Cool, awesome. And then the other thing, this goes way back to the beginning
Mm.
of what you mentioned. You get some, I think you mentioned you can get analytics or logging for your components and things like that. Is that configurable? Or like, for example, if I have just like a button, I don't think I need, some generic button. I don't need logs or something like that. But like, I don't know, some sort of checkout component there, I want some analytics and logs. How does that look?
So basically today, the entire analytics feature is pretty new, and we are building all the time new. Even just before the meeting, we built new analytics around measuring collaboration and reuse, because in today you don't even know how much to collaborate or share. Basically, it's usually kind of near to zero. But for example, we monitor for each component how much dependence it has, and maybe how much impact it has, like kind of recursive usage of it. And then we aggregate this in the component level, in the scope level. Scope is like a group of component in a business domain, in the scope level, in the organization level. So we add all the time different way of measuring the effort you put. So you make a component, how much value you get from it, how many people are using it, are they using an up-to-date version, how many people are using an old version of this component, how many people using two versions of this component in the same tree but in different versions. So which means kind of inconsistency and bundle size problems. So, and we build different way of analytics all the time. You don't need to do anything to get this analytics. We analyze the graph, we analyze the usage, we analyze the source code all the time, and we just give you this. It's part of like the cloud offering, of course.
Cool. Yeah, very, very cool. Very interesting stuff. Thanks.
Sure.
Nice. Okay. All right. So let's do some promos before we wrap things up. So, Chris, what would you like to promote?
Sure. Yeah, I'll share again what I'm currently working on. That's code video. You can convert basically with a declarative syntax of actions and kind of like speech annotations. You can automate uh, basically educational software videos. Maybe later it will grow, but for now I'm focusing on how developers like us can create quite easily educational software videos. And ironically enough, it's unfortunately I haven't built it with Bit, but I've gone in the direction where I've learned slowly, like when you do an open source thing or project, it makes sense a lot of times to break everything into reusable either functions or components or things like that. I haven't gotten as low as component level, but a lot
You
of the
should try it.
packages, I might look into this, into using it, because it makes so much sense when you break everything into some sort of reusable function or a util function. It has its own versioning, it has its own tests. It's way easier from an open source standpoint. So I will definitely look into Bit maybe to organize all that. So
Nice. Okay. Well, in my case, I don't have any specific picks this week, any specific promos. So I'm just gonna pass the ball on to Gilad. So I imagine that you're gonna pick bit.dev, but who knows?
Uh,
Maybe there's
Yeah,
some other project you'd
of
like
course,
to mention.
I would want anyone to take a look on BitDev and the Bit repo, which is open source. Most of what I described here is open source, so you can try and take a look if you want. I do want to promote something different, just to not be like, of course, I'm promoting Bit, but something which is not bound directly to me, which is Home Assistant. Home Assistant is a very big platform for home automation. It's also an open source, one of the biggest open source in the world. And I'm using it every day to build my own home, doing some crazy stuff. So anyone who is looking into home automation and smart homes, you should really check it out. Home Assistant, you'll find it in Google in 1 second. And that's it.
Okay. Nice. Gilad, Thank you so much. We definitely have more things to talk about. So if you ever want to get into the show again, you will be very welcomed. And I'm sure that we can talk for 10 more episodes probably. So, so yeah, very, very nice having you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you,
Thanks a lot.
thank you for inviting me. It was really great fun, and yeah, we didn't cover many topics, um, but I would like to come again whenever it works for you. There are so many to speak, and eventually, I really hope that people will write and reuse more code and spend their time building new things and not reinventing the wheel every day, every day again. Um, so everyone will enjoy and benefit from better code
Yes,
bases and speed
definitely.
development.
Definitely, definitely. You're welcome. Thank you. Well, thanks everyone for sticking until the end of the show. Have a great week, and I will see you in the next one.
Thank you.
Bye bye.